Hello everyone, this is Books with Genghis Khan, and I have my first mid-month check-in. I love doing the monthly updates, and I don't really think I have enough to talk about with weekly updates, but I think I want to start trying these mid-month check-ins to do wrap-ups a little bit more frequently than just once a month. And I've been reading a lot recently, so I do have a lot to chat about with this one. So the month started off not on the highest note for me because right at the end of January, I'd read the fifth season, book one of the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I was really into it. I was excited for the whole trilogy, and then I read book two, The Obelisk Gate, and just did not have a very good time with it. I didn't really love where the narrative was going with the plot. A lot of new side characters got introduced that just weren't very fleshed out or interesting. The magic system expanded in a strange way that didn't really add anything for me. And so that whole sort of story just ground to a narrative halt for me. And I was pretty bummed out about it. I was hopeful that it was going to be a new, maybe favorite trilogy, but that was not to be. And it was kind of grim and depressing. I didn't want to jump right into book three with that one. So as part of the Keymark Readathon run by A.R. Witham, I thought, I need to read something by an indie author. Let me try his book, The Legend of Blackjack. And I wanted something that was a change of pace, a little breath of fresh air after reading something so grim like in the first two books of The Broken Earth. And it was a breath of fresh air. It was a delight in that it felt like a child's fairy tale, but written for adults, specifically for us to kind of have a nostalgic kind of experience where it's almost like a combination of the Chronicles of Narnia and a little bit of the episodic adventure feel of The Hobbit. And I had a good time with it. It felt maybe a little long for me, and simultaneously like it didn't spend long enough fleshing out the characters or having quieter moments. But that's not the kind of book it was trying to be. It was a rollicking kind of good time, and by the end I actually was finding myself invested. So overall it was a worthwhile experience, but nothing that is going to be too memorable. And if you want a kind of change of pace that is more of a kind of kid's tale, but pitched toward adults, because there's some gritty violence, also some social themes and content that really I think are for adults only. So it's a kind of a strange reading experience that way. But the main character is like a 14-year-old who's an orphan, who's made me feel at some points like a kid again, like I was living through Jack's very naive, curious, passionate eyes, and it was a nice ride in that sense. And there were some really creative elements with some of the animal characters who could talk, and there were different races of beings there that made it very lively and interesting. And the overall arching kind of plot did come together by the end for me in a meaningful way. So that was a success. I gave that one, I think, 4 stars. And then coming back to the Broken Earth trilogy, it was time to finish it. I just kind of wanted to move on and get it out of the way and hopefully end on a higher note than book 2 left me at. Book 2, I think I gave 2.5 stars and kind of just did not enjoy much of that read. But book 3 was a step up for me. I think I gave it 4 stars in the end. It was still a disappointment in that one of the main characters I just did not really care about. It was a child character. I did a whole review for the Broken Earth trilogy recently on the channel that you can check out to hear more of my in detail kind of nitpicks and things that weren't working so great for me, and some things that were. But there was a flashback sequence in the Stone Sky book 3 that really did work for me. I kind of wish the whole book was just from this POV. Then once the story hit the climax and it was kind of gained momentum for the following action, I was engaged by it, even if I wasn't in love with the story or the world and characters. It was still a worthwhile read, and the writing was very powerful at times. And so overall, I'm happy I read it, and it's a big kind of series in the modern fantasy genre. So I wanted to know what's going on with N.K. Jemisin and the Broken Earth trilogy. I also like to start and finish series and binge them as quickly as I can to kind of so they're not hanging over me, and so I can have maximum immersion and have memory for the little details and see how things play out over different books, and that definitely helps my overall kind of reading experience. And so yeah, overall it was okay. But after that, I was excited to get back to The Expanse because I had read just nothing but The Expanse in December. I think I read the first 6 books. Then I read book 7 in January as I was waiting for book 9 to get released in paperback. And so, yeah, I dove in to Tiamat's Wrath after the Broken Earth trilogy, and after just the kind of grimness of the Broken Earth books and my lack of real investment, coming back into The Expanse was just like dipping into a jacuzzi or a hot spring, and just being back with characters that I cared so much about, with a writing style that just connects with me so well. Yeah, this book was probably one of the best reads I can remember from the last few years. It was a wild ride, full of tension, kind where you're just on the roller coaster, holding onto your seat for dear life, wondering what is going to happen. This was a fantastic read, and it's very fast paced. It was kind of followed up on the setup that was book 7, Persepolis Rising, and sometimes series go in a way where the second to last book is kind of slower and a lot of setup for the crazy avalanche of a final book, like The Wheel of Time was like that. But this series, it front-loaded a lot of its action in the last part into the second to last book, and so this was just all out tension, and loved it. There was a new POV character in here who was just astounding, and I couldn't get enough of that character. Yeah, brilliant job with Tiamat's Wrath. And then after that, I went right into the short story Alberon near the back of the Memories Legion collection. And actually, I realized after with the author's afterword for that story that they had written it originally, or meant it to be before Tiamat's Wrath, but then published it after. So it doesn't really matter. You can read it in any order. But that was a really solid story. I loved all of these short stories, and I think I have just one more to go. And then we got to book 9, the end of the saga. That's Leviathan Falls. I gave this one 5 stars, just like the last one. And it's a very different book than Tiamat's Wrath, though. It's quieter. It's more cerebral. It's a little bit more high-concept sci-fi than the action-adventure of the last book. I love this one almost as much. I tend to like the faster-paced ones with a little more suspenseful plotting, maybe a little bit more than this type. But what a fantastic, satisfying, cathartic end to the long journey. This whole series is a great combination of near-future, hard science fiction, sci-fi adventure, with also a lot of high-concept, speculative sci-fi in there that really gets you thinking about humanity's place in the cosmos, and maybe some things that are a little more on the supernatural side. But it also combines all of that with a very modern take on characters, with lots of characters that you're very close with psychologically in their POVs, and lots of different character relationship dynamics, a lot of characters you come to care a lot about, and even sympathize with a lot of the antagonists, possibly, especially towards the later part of the series. I thought in this last 3-book arc, just James S.A. Corey could do no wrong. And there might have been a few points in the middle of the series that I think dipped a little bit, maybe in books 3 and 4, some of the characters, some of the POVs, maybe not as gripping as the rest. But overall, just a fantastic job. I really loved basically everything about this series. It's definitely one of my new favorites, and I'm excited to have seen that it's not the end of the journey, actually, because there is a Kickstarter going on right now for graphic novels coming out sometime maybe later this year that will fill in some of the time between the time jump between books 6 and 7. And I'm not sure exactly who's writing that. I think it might be people involved from the show. I'm not sure if James S. Corey are, but I just love spending more time with this crew, and a different medium too with graphic novels. And I'm looking forward to this not being the end of my time with them. And I still have one more short story, the final one published, The Sins of Our Fathers. But love this ride, and yeah, pretty emotional. I wouldn't say I got deeply kind of physically emotional as I was reading the last couple books. It was more just kind of intellectual engagement and deeply caring, but it didn't get me to cry or didn't pull that level of emotion out of me, maybe like some of my greatest reads of all time. But this was so worthwhile, so fun, and honestly, it's very intelligent, and I think the authors Ty Frank and Janet Abraham have a lot of wisdom and a lot to say about human psychology, about the way that we interact and the way that we have conflicts, and just so much here that was enriching and thought provoking, on top of the just thrilling adventure plots with all the twists and turns that you can't see coming. Perfect series for me, and am sad that that is all over. Now, what am I reading next? Well, I'll read that last Expanse short story, and then I'm going to be diving into The Empire's Ruin by Brian Staveley. This is the first book in the new Chronicle of the Unhewn Throne trilogy. After a little bit of a time jump, I'll be budding reading this read by Kyle, maybe having a live chat about it. My last Staveley read, Skullsworn, did not go well, so I am hoping that this goes completely the other way and that I feel like Staveley takes a big step up. He wrote in the foreword that he actually wrote a whole draft of this big book, and his editor said it wasn't good enough. He went back to the drawing board, did a whole rewrite, and so I'm interested to see what's going on and see if I feel like he is improving as an author, because he was a very new author coming to the profession when he wrote the first Unhewn Throne trilogy. He left the teaching profession, and so he's trying something new. I think that trilogy was very rough around the edges in some ways, and I didn't love certain aspects of it, but I did like others, and so I am hopeful that this will make me view Staveley in a better light. We'll see. Alright, so that's what I've been reading the last couple weeks, and tell me what you think of The Expanse if you've read those last couple Expanse books, or if not, you're in for a wild ride ahead of you. And yeah, hope you have a nice time, and see you later.